The heavy doors of Orion Station's docking bay hissed open, releasing a wave of pressurized air that carried the scent of burnt plasma coils, overcooked protein rations, and the faint metallic tang of fear. The moment Zira stepped onto the deck, the noise of the bustling port dimmed, conversations cut short, footsteps hesitated, and all eyes flicked in her direction before quickly darting away. Zira was used to it. She moved forward, each step deliberate, the reinforced soles of her boots clicking against the steel-plated floor with the kind of confidence that made people nervous. The long, pointed ears that marked her as other twitched slightly as she caught snippets of hushed whispers. That's her, the Butcher of Xiphos. She took down an entire battalion on Nerith Prime. I heard she doesn't sleep, just waits in the dark until her next kill. Zira suppressed a sigh. The stories never got old, only more absurd. The truth was far less dramatic. Yes, she was a warrior. Yes, she had fought in battles across the galaxy. But did she drink the blood of her enemies? Number. That one was particularly ridiculous, considering she preferred spiced nebula tea. The crowd parted like a fluid organism, people stepping aside instinctively, avoiding her gaze. Fear. It clung to them, thick as engine grease. Normally Zira ignored it, moving through whatever spaceport, battlefield, or political summit she had to endure. But today something was different. Someone wasn't moving out of her way. A human man stood in the middle of the walkway, holding a large, beat-up crate that looked like it had been through one too many trips through an atmosphere unfit for landing. He was tall but lean, his brown hair a tousled mess, his jacket stained with something that looked suspiciously like oil, but smelled more like disappointment. Unlike everyone else, he didn't shrink back or scuttle away. Instead, he looked at her, sighed dramatically, and shifted the crate in his arms. "Oh, fantastic," he muttered. "Another galactic terror blocking my way. My day just keeps getting better." Zira blinked. She wasn't sure what was more shocking, the fact that he wasn't cowering in fear or the sheer exhaustion in his voice. She tilted her head slightly, examining him. He didn't wear a soldier's uniform, nor did he have the hardened stance of a bounty hunter. No weapons, no armor, no telltale marks of an assassin, just a hauler. Interesting. She took a slow step forward, watching for the moment recognition might flicker in his eyes, the moment fear would set in. But it never came. He just groaned, adjusting his grip on the crate. "Listen, lady," he said, not unkindly but definitely impatiently. "I've had a long day, and my arms are about 5 minutes away from falling off. So, unless you plan on moving, I'm either going to drop this crate on your boots or on my own foot, and I gotta be honest, I don't love either option." For the first time in a long, long while, Zira felt something entirely unfamiliar: confusion. She narrowed her eyes, crossing her arms over her chest. "Everyone is afraid of me," she said, her voice low, steady, edged with the quiet weight of a reputation earned through war and bloodshed. "But why aren't you afraid of me, human?" The man blinked, as if only now registering the gravity of the situation. He looked her up and down, taking in her armor, her stance, the unmistakable aura of someone who had walked through fire and left the ashes behind. Then, to her absolute bewilderment, he shrugged. "You ever had a cargo hold depressurize mid-flight?" he asked. Zira frowned. "No." "Well, I have," he said. "Ever had to explain to a customs officer why half your shipment of planetary grain is now floating somewhere in deep space?" "No." "Ever been yelled at by a foreman who just found out their entire order of Syntha-Coffee was replaced by 100 crates of industrial lubricants because some idiot mislabeled the cargo?" Zira hesitated. "No." "Then congratulations," the man said, shifting his crate again. "You are not the most terrifying thing I've dealt with today." There was a beat of silence. Zira simply stared. The man adjusted his grip again, exhaled, then finally gave up and set the crate down with an unceremonious thud. He stretched his arms with an audible crack, then offered her a hand. "Max Carter," he said. "Professional hauler, part-time problem magnet, and full-time survivor of ridiculous workplace disasters." Zira glanced at his outstretched hand, then at his face. He had the kind of expression that suggested he had long ago resigned himself to the absurdity of the universe and had simply decided to roll with it. Slowly she reached out, shaking his hand firmly. Zira, she said. Nice to meet you, Zira, Max said. Now, unless you're about to kill me, I'd really like to get this crate to Dock C-17 before my client docks my pay. Zira considered that. She could kill him if she wanted, but she didn't. For the first time in a long time, she found herself curious. She released his hand. I will walk with you. Max arched a brow. Oh, okay, sure. No offense, but you do know people are currently staring at me like I've just befriended an apex predator, right? Zira glanced at the onlookers. Some had their mouths open. A few looked like they might faint. She turned back to Max. That is not my problem. Fair enough, he said, picking up his crate. But if I get thrown out of a bar later because of this, I'm blaming you. Zira smirked. A small one, but it was there. Noted. And with that, the most feared warrior in the galaxy and a cargo hauler with terrible luck walked side by side through Orion Station, leaving behind a crowd of bewildered, speechless onlookers who would be talking about this moment for weeks to come. Max Carter was pretty sure he was making a terrible life decision. It wasn't every day you found yourself walking side by side with a living legend. Scratch that, a living nightmare, if you listen to the rumors. Zira, the butcher of Xiphos. The woman whose name was whispered in hushed voices across 1,000 worlds, and here he was, escorting her through Orion Station like she was just another crew member on his hauler. No big deal. Just another Tuesday. Max grunted as he adjusted the crate in his arms, his muscles protesting the effort. You know, he muttered, for someone who's supposedly terrifying, you're surprisingly quiet. I keep expecting you to growl at me or declare that I am unworthy to walk in your presence. Zira tilted her head slightly, her long ears twitching at his words. Would you prefer that? Not really, Max admitted. I feel like I just embarrassed both of us if I screamed and ran. Zira made a sound that might have been amusement. Then again, it might have just been the way her armor shifted as she walked. Hard to tell. As they moved deeper into the station, the reactions around them varied between outright panic and morbid curiosity. People whispered into their comm units, shopkeepers lowered protective shutters, and one particularly dramatic traveler gasped, clutched his chest, and fainted against a noodle stand. Max sighed. Do people always react to you like this? Yes. That's gotta be exhausting. Zira shrugged. It is efficient. I rarely have to wait in line. Max opened his mouth to argue, but quickly realized she had a point. Okay, yeah, that's actually a perk. Still, you ever just wish people saw you as something other than galactic menace extraordinaire? Zira didn't answer right away. Instead, she glanced at the flashing neon sign of a small eatery advertising fresh synth meat, only slightly toxic, and nodded toward it. Are those edible? Max followed her gaze. The food? Technically. What does technically mean? It means you won't die immediately, but you'll definitely regret it. Zira considered this. I will try one. Max blinked. Wait, what? She was already walking toward the stand. The owner, a four-armed Gorthian with pale blue skin and a face that looked like it had lost several bets with a plasma cutter, let out a strangled noise when he saw her. Are you Zira the butcher? Zira placed a single credit chip on the counter. I would like one of your technically edible food items. The Gorthian made a choked squeak and immediately began preparing something at a speed Max had never seen before. It was like watching a hyperspace jump, but with significantly more sizzling grease and panic. Max rubbed his temples. This is going to be a whole thing, isn't it? A minute later, the Gorthian shakily handed Zira a wrapped synth meat skewer. She inspected it with the same level of scrutiny Max imagined she gave a new enemy's battle strategy, then took a bite. Silence. The entire street seemed to be holding its breath. Then Zira chewed, swallowed, nodded once. It is adequate. The Gorthian's knees nearly buckled in relief. Max, meanwhile, just stared at her in horror. You actually ate that? Do you want to suffer later? Zira took another bite. I have endured worse. Max shook his head. Lady, if you survive that, I'm adding stomach of steel to your list of terrifying attributes. Before Zira could respond, Max's comm unit buzzed. He sighed, juggling the crate to free a hand, and tapped the side of his earpiece. Carter, If you don't get that shipment to Dock C-17 in the next 5 minutes, I swear I will personally jettison you into the nearest sun." The familiar voice of his boss, Captain Relo, crackled over the line. Max winced. "Hey, Cap, funny story." "No funny stories, no excuses, no distractions." Rilo's voice was getting dangerously close to the "I will actually murder you" tone. "Move your ass, Carter," Max sighed. "On it." He ended the call and turned to Zyra. "Well, terrifying space warrior lady, as much as I'm enjoying this delightful stroll, I gotta get this delivery in before my boss has an aneurysm." Zyra nodded. "Then we should move faster." Max was about to agree when something felt off. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. Zyra must have sensed it too, because she tensed, eyes narrowing as she scanned the street, and then, from the corner of his eye, Max spotted them. A group of figures, dressed in dark armor, lingering too casually at the entrance of an alley, watching them. Bounty hunters. Max exhaled sharply. "Ah, great. I don't suppose these guys are old friends of yours." Zyra's expression darkened. "No." The bounty hunters stepped forward. The leader, a tall humanoid with a scar across his cheek and a grin that made Max instantly dislike him, stopped a few feet away. "Well, well," the man said, his voice smug. "The galaxy's most wanted warrior, just wandering around a space station like she doesn't have 100 contracts on her head. That's bold." Zyra didn't respond. She just stared at him with the kind of gaze that could probably make a star implode. The bounty hunter chuckled. "Tell you what, you make this easy, and I won't have to blast half this street apart dragging you in." Max cleared his throat. Question, if half the street gets blasted, do I get hazard pay?" The bounty hunter turned his glare to Max. "Who the hell are you?" "Just a guy trying to make a delivery, but I have a vested interest in not getting shot today, so—" Max gestured vaguely at Zyra. "Any chance you guys could schedule this attempted kidnapping for, next Tuesday? I hear Tuesdays are great for bounty collections." One of the hunters actually looked confused for a second. The leader, however, just sneered. "You've got guts, human. Too bad you're standing next to a dead woman." Zyra's lip curled slightly. "You assume much." And then she moved. It was fast, too fast. Before the bounty hunters could react, she closed the distance between them, grabbed the leader by the wrist, and twisted. A sickening crack echoed through the air as he howled in pain. Chaos erupted. Max barely had time to dodge as blaster fire zipped past his head. "Oh, why does this always happen to me?" Zyra, meanwhile, was already dismantling the attackers with terrifying efficiency. One was sent sprawling with a brutal kick. Another crumpled after a well-placed elbow to the ribs. Max watched as one hunter tried to run. He sighed, muttering to himself. "They never learn." Sure enough, Zyra threw a knife that embedded itself in the man's shoulder. He went down like a malfunctioning drone. Silence fell. Max exhaled. "Well, that happened." Zyra stepped over one of the groaning bodies. "You should finish your delivery." Max stared at her, then at the unconscious bounty hunters, then back at her. "You know what? Yeah, let's do that." And with that, they walked away, leaving a very, very confused street full of spectators behind. Max Carter had officially decided that today was one of his top 5 worst days, and that was saying something, considering he once had to explain to a customs officer why his cargo manifest said medical supplies, when, in reality, he was transporting a shipment of highly illegal, highly explosive fireworks for a festival on Tarsus 9. For the record, it wasn't his fault, mostly. But this was worse. Because Max had just watched Zyra take down a squad of bounty hunters like she was swatting away a mild inconvenience, and now they were casually walking toward Dock C-17 like nothing happened, like she hadn't just broken several arms and possibly a rib cage or two. And the worst part? No one was stopping them. The people of Orion Station had already perfected the fine art of minding their own business, which, Max had to admit, was a trait he usually appreciated. Right now, however, it was giving him a deep sense of existential dread, because this meant that the galaxy's most dangerous warrior was now his problem. He shifted the weight of the crate in his arms and sighed. "So, just checking, you don't have, I don't know, a horde of bounty hunters secretly tracking your every move, do you?" Zyra gave him a sidelong glance. If I did, would you still be walking beside me? Max considered this. Well, I am already in too deep, so probably, she nodded, seemingly satisfied with that answer. Max exhaled sharply, muttering under his breath, Yeah, great. That's what I was afraid of. As they neared the docking bay, a heavy-set security droid stationed at the entrance scanned them with an eerie blue light. Its bulky frame was covered in dented plating, the paint peeling in places, and it had the general demeanor of a bureaucratic worker who had long ago lost any enthusiasm for its job. State your purpose. Max held up the crate. Delivery for Dock C-17. Don't suppose you feel like letting us through without... The droid immediately cut him off with a droning beep. Cargo inspection required. Stand by for scanning. Max groaned. Oh, come on. I have 5 minutes before my boss throttles me, and you want to scan my crate? For what? Do I look like someone smuggling illegal goods? The droid beeped again. Statistics indicate that 42.7% of individuals attempting to bypass cargo scans use similar arguments. Max scowled. Oh, you suck. Zyra, meanwhile, simply stepped forward and fixed the droid with an expression of cool indifference. Are we finished here? The droid hesitated. Then, almost imperceptibly, its servos whirred in a way that almost sounded like nervousness. Processing. Clearance granted. Please proceed. Max gawked as the droid actually stepped aside, granting them entry. Wait, what? That's it? That's all it took? Zyra walked forward without hesitation. Efficiency. Max let out a slow, incredulous laugh. I have wasted years arguing with station security, and you just stared at it and won? Zyra didn't respond, probably because she didn't need to. As they entered Dock C-17, Max's ship, the Lucky Break, came into view. It was a freighter in the loosest definition of the word, covered in mismatched panels, dented from what Max insisted were mild accidents and not a series of terrible decisions. And standing at the base of the loading ramp, arms crossed, was Captain Relo. Relo was an Orion-born ex-smuggler with the temperament of a woman who had long since lost patience for nonsense. Her silver hair was pulled back into a loose bun, and her sharp violet eyes locked onto Max with the intensity of a plasma cutter. You're late, she said. Max grinned, setting the crate down with a thunk. Technically, I am on time because I just got here, and therefore Relo held up a finger. Before you say another word, why is Zyra the butcher standing next to you, like she's your new co-pilot? Max opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Zyra, then back at Relo. Relo's expression remained flat. That's the best you got? Zyra, meanwhile, remained completely unfazed. I required an escort, she said simply. Relo narrowed her eyes. Max is not an escort. Max raised a finger. Okay, but to be fair, I did successfully escort her here, so technically, shut up. Max shut up. Relo let out a long, suffering sigh and pinched the bridge of her nose. All right, you know what? I don't even want to know. If she's not here to kill us, that's good enough for me. Zyra nodded once. I am not. Fantastic, Relo said dryly. Then she turned back to Max. Unload that crate, Carter. Now. Max gave a quick salute. Aye, aye, Captain. Right away, Captain. Totally on it, Captain. He started moving, hauling the crate up the ramp while muttering to himself about unfair workplace conditions. Zyra watched him go, then turned back to Relo. He is unusual. Relo snorted. That's one way to put it. She studied Zyra for a moment. So, what's your deal? Why are you walking around with a hauler like him? Zyra considered the question. It wasn't that she didn't have an answer. It was just that she wasn't entirely sure what the answer was. Finally, she settled on, I was curious. Relo arched a brow. Curious? About Max? Zyra nodded. Relo chuckled. Lady, you must have seen some weird things in your life. But if Max Carter is what makes you curious, you're in for one hell of a time. Zyra didn't disagree. As Max returned, wiping his hands on his jacket, he grinned. Okay, Captain. Cargo's unloaded. No bounty hunters have jumped me yet, and I haven't been shot at in the last 5 minutes. I'd say that's a solid win. Relo gave him a long look. I can still shoot you myself. Max sighed. Every time with this. As Zira watched them banter, something about the lucky break and its ridiculous crew made her pause. Maybe, just maybe, she had found something worth staying for. Max Carter had a lot of regrets in life. There was the time he tried to sweet-talk a customs officer and ended up in a holding cell for 3 days because he accidentally flirted with their spouse. There was the incident with the exploding soup canisters on Rigel 6, which, to this day, he swore was not entirely his fault. And then there was the time he bet a whole paycheck on a game of Farakian roulette without knowing that the Farakians had 3 dice instead of 2. But right now, his biggest regret was letting Zira onto his ship, because the moment they took off from Orion Station, Max realized something very important. Zira didn't know how to relax. She stood in the middle of the Lucky Break's cramped common area like a statue carved from solid menace, arms crossed, long ears twitching slightly as she surveyed the ship's interior, like she expected a hidden assassin to leap from behind the coffee machine. Max, currently busy recalibrating the ship's nav system, let out a long sigh and finally turned to her. "So, do you, want to sit down? Maybe drink something that isn't made of adrenaline and murder?" Zira's sharp violet eyes flicked to him.